3 years of late-night phone calls, weekend road trips to Lake Tahoe, and family barbecues where everyone assumed we were dating should have been my first clue that I was living in a fantasy. Lindsay Chen and I had built what I thought was the foundation of something real. She was the marketing coordinator at Premier Luxury Motors, I was a warehouse supervisor at a distribution center in Sacramento, and somehow we'd become inseparable despite what I now realize were very different ideas about our future. I'd spent months planning the perfect moment to tell her how I felt, choosing a quiet evening at our favorite coffee shop where we'd spent countless hours talking about everything from her marketing campaigns to my ideas for improving supply chain efficiency. "Lindsay, I need to tell you something that's been on my mind for a while," I said, my heart hammering as she looked up from her latte with those dark eyes that had kept me awake thinking about possibilities. "I know we've been friends for 3 years, but somewhere along the way, I fell for you completely. All those trips, the dinners with your family, the way you call me when you've had a rough day, it feels like we're already building something together. I'd love to see where this could go if we stopped pretending we're just friends." The silence that followed felt like waiting for test results you know will be bad. Her expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like pity, and she set down her cup with the careful precision of someone delivering terrible news. "Oh, Noah," she said, and I knew immediately that my world was about to change. "You're not the type I date, sorry. I mean, you're an amazing friend, but I need someone with real ambition, you know? Like an entrepreneur or someone building their own empire. I'm attracted to guys who think bigger than just showing up to work every day." The words hit me like cold water, but she wasn't finished dismantling 3 years of what I'd thought was mutual connection. "I honestly thought you understood we were just friends. I never gave you any signals that this was romantic. I need someone who can match my energy, who's building something impressive. You're sweet, but you're basically a warehouse guy, and I need someone who can take me to the kind of places and events where successful people network." I sat there absorbing every syllable, feeling smaller with each explanation of why I wasn't enough. "You seem genuinely surprised that I saw this as more than friendship," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, because it was obviously platonic. We hang out, we talk, but Noah, come on, look at the life I want versus the life you're offering. I follow entrepreneurs on Instagram, I go to business networking events, I want someone who's building an empire, not someone who's content managing other people's inventory." The irony wasn't lost on me that she was explaining my inadequacy while sitting in a coffee shop I'd driven her to because her BMW was in the shop again, something that happened monthly because she prioritized appearance over reliability. "I appreciate your honesty," I said, standing up and leaving a 20 on the table for both our drinks. "I hope you find exactly what you're looking for." As I walked to my truck, I could feel her watching me through the window, probably wondering why I wasn't fighting harder or begging her to reconsider. But something had crystallized in that moment. Not anger, not bitterness, just a cold clarity about what I needed to prove to myself. If Lindsay needed a successful entrepreneur to respect me, then I'd become exactly that type of man, not for her, but to show myself that warehouse supervisor wasn't the limit of my potential. 3 years of friendship had just taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. Never invest in someone who sees your current situation as your permanent ceiling. Instead of drowning my rejection in beer and self-pity like every romantic comedy suggests, I went home that night and did something that would have shocked Lindsay. I opened my laptop and started researching how to launch a logistics consulting business. Turns out, 3 years of optimizing warehouse operations and cutting distribution costs by 23% for my company had given me exactly the expertise small businesses desperately needed but couldn't afford from the big consulting firms. Within a week, I'd enrolled in evening business courses at Sacramento State, hired a personal trainer named Marcus who promised to help me build the body that matches your ambitions, and started attending every entrepreneurship meetup within a 50-mile radius. The plan was simple but expensive. Keep my day job to fund the transformation while systematically building the life Lindsay claimed I wasn't ambitious enough to create. Marcus had me meal prepping like a bodybuilder and hitting the gym at 5 a.m. before work, while my evenings were split between business classes and networking events where I practiced introducing myself as a logistics optimization consultant instead of a warehouse supervisor. I documented everything on Instagram, not the rejection that motivated it, but the daily grind of building something from nothing. Photos of my meal prep, post-workout selfies, screenshots of business courses completed, pictures from networking events where I was slowly building relationships with actual entrepreneurs who treated me like an equal instead of someone beneath their station. 6 months into this transformation, while I was reviewing contracts for my first potential client, my phone rang with Lindsay's name, the first time she called since that devastating coffee shop conversation. "Noah, hey, this is going to sound random, but I need your brain for something work-related," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone she used when she needed a favor. Premier Luxury is having serious issues with our inventory management system. Cars are getting delivered to wrong locations, our database is a mess, and my boss is losing his mind. You always understood this logistics stuff better than anyone. Could you maybe look at our setup and tell us what we're doing wrong? The old Noah would have dropped everything to help her, would have seen this as an opportunity to prove my value and maybe earn some gratitude that could lead to something more. But sitting in my small apartment that now doubled as my business office, surrounded by strategy books and client proposals, I felt only a detached amusement at the irony. Actually, I'm focusing on growth opportunities right now, I said, using the exact phrase I'd heard at networking events. Sounds like you need a professional consultant though. I'd recommend reaching out to some of the larger firms that specialize in automotive inventory optimization. They'll have the resources to handle something that complex. The silence on her end was telling. This was probably the first time in 3 years I'd said no to helping her with anything. Oh, okay, I just thought since you were always so good at that stuff and we're friends. We are friends, I said calmly. Which is why I'm suggesting you get proper professional help instead of free advice that might not be comprehensive enough for your company's needs. Good luck with it though. After I hung up, I stared at my business plan for about 10 minutes, realizing I'd just turned down a chance to insert myself back into Lindsay's life because I was genuinely more interested in building something that belonged entirely to me. Marcus was right when he said the physical transformation would be the easy part. Apparently reshaping how I valued my own time and expertise was going to require just as much discipline as learning to deadlift twice my body weight. 18 months after that coffee shop rejection, I was sitting in my downtown Sacramento office space overlooking the Capitol building, reviewing contracts that would have seemed impossible back when I was checking inventory spreadsheets in a warehouse. Martinez Logistics Consulting had landed 3 major clients in 6 months, a regional restaurant chain that needed supply chain optimization, a tech startup requiring distribution strategy, and, ironically, a luxury car dealership across town from Lindsay's that wanted to poach her company's best practices. The revenue was enough to quit my day job, lease professional office space, and hire my first employee, a sharp business graduate named Katie who handled client communications while I focused on strategy development. My physical transformation had become equally dramatic. Marcus had guided me through cutting from 190 pounds of warehouse soft to 175 pounds of lean muscle, and my new wardrobe reflected the confidence that came with actually earning the right to network with Sacramento's business elite. I'd started deliberately posting photos from the high-end business events I now attended as a legitimate entrepreneur, pictures from the California Logistics Association annual gala, screenshots of my speaking engagement at the Sacramento Chamber of Commerce, selfies from luxury car shows where dealers sought my advice on inventory optimization. Every Instagram post was carefully curated to showcase the sophisticated lifestyle Lindsay had claimed I wasn't ambitious enough to achieve, though I told myself the documentation was about celebrating my own success rather than proving anything to someone who'd already made her opinion clear. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was frequently photographed at the exact upscale restaurants and networking events she'd mentioned wanting to attend with a real entrepreneur. 3 months ago, after 8 months of complete social media silence, Lindsay had started liking my posts, first sporadically, then consistently, eventually leaving comments like, "Wow, look at you," and "So proud of how far you've come," as if she'd been cheering me on the entire time instead of rejecting the foundation I'd built this success upon. My new social circle consisted entirely of successful professionals who treated me as an equal, other consultants, startup founders, established business owners who invited me to golf, asked my opinion on market trends, and included me in their investment discussions because I'd proven I belonged at their table. "Noah, you've got to tell me your secret," said Jennifer, a marketing agency owner I'd met at a networking event. "Going from employee to entrepreneur and completely transforming yourself physically in under 2 years? That's the kind of discipline most people only dream about." The secret was simple but painful. Nothing motivates self-improvement quite like someone explaining in detail why your current self isn't worth their time, then having the discipline to prove them wrong not for their validation, but for your own self-respect. When my phone buzzed with another Instagram notification showing Lindsay had liked my latest post, a photo from last weekend's charity gala where I'd been photographed with Sacramento's mayor discussing small business development, I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, I felt nothing at all, which was somehow more powerful than anger or vindication. The Northern California Entrepreneurship Conference in San Francisco was supposed to be a networking opportunity, but when I spotted Harper Sinclair during the lunch break, my focus shifted entirely to the confident brunette who was confidently discussing supply chain logistics with a group of tech executives like she actually understood the complexities instead of just nodding along. Harper owned Sinclair Design Solutions, an interior design firm specializing in luxury commercial spaces, and when she approached me after overhearing my conversation about reducing distribution costs for retail clients, her first words were refreshingly direct. "You're Noah Martinez, right? I heard your presentation this morning about micro-fulfillment centers. Absolutely brilliant approach to urban logistics challenges," she said, extending her hand with the kind of confident smile that suggested she was genuinely impressed rather than making polite small talk. "Harper Sinclair, and I have about 15 questions about how your strategies might apply to optimizing design material sourcing for my firm." For the next hour, we discussed business strategy with a kind of intellectual chemistry I'd never experienced, someone who not only understood my ideas but challenged them with insights from her own industry experience. "The transformation from warehouse supervisor to consultant in 2 years is incredible," she said over coffee. "Most people talk about reinventing themselves but never actually do the work. That kind of discipline and vision is exactly what real success requires." The irony hit me immediately. Harper embodied everything Lindsay had claimed to value: successful entrepreneur, sophisticated taste, connections throughout California's business community, yet she was completely fascinated by the blue-collar background that Lindsay had found so unappealing. "I love that you built this from actual hands-on experience instead of just MBA theory," Harper continued. "Too many consultants have never worked a real job, never understood what it's like to optimize operations when efficiency actually matters. Your warehouse background makes you authentic and grounded in ways most business advisors never achieve." Over the following months, our relationship developed naturally through shared interests in business strategy, fitness challenges we'd set for each other, and weekend trips to wine country where we discuss expansion plans for both our companies. Harper never once made me feel inadequate about my past. Instead, she treated my journey from warehouse floor to executive consultant as evidence of the work ethic and problem-solving ability that had attracted her in the first place. "My parents are going to love you," she said during one of our Napa Valley trips. "Dad built his construction company from nothing, and Mom always says the best partners are people who understand the value of actual work." When Harper introduced me to her high-powered network at a Silicon Valley design showcase, she described me as "my boyfriend Noah, who's revolutionizing logistics consulting for mid-market businesses," with obvious pride rather than the apologetic tone I'd grown accustomed to from Lindsay during our few public appearances. The contrast was stunning. Where Lindsay had treated me like a secret she was slightly embarrassed about, Harper actively promoted my business expertise and bragged about my transformation story to clients who ended up hiring Martinez Logistics because she positioned me as an innovative thinker rather than someone she was settling for. "You know what I love most about us?" Harper said one evening as we reviewed quarterly projections for both our businesses. "We're building something together, supporting each other's ambitions instead of one person carrying the other. This is what real partnership looks like." As I watched her celebrate a major contract win with the same enthusiasm she'd shown for my business victories, I realized I'd spent 3 years trying to convince someone to see my potential when I should have been looking for someone who recognized my value from day one. By year 3 of Martinez Logistics Consulting, the business had expanded beyond anything I'd imagined when I was plotting my post-rejection transformation in that cramped apartment. We'd grown to 12 employees, opened a satellite office in San Jose, and landed contracts with Fortune 500 companies that flew me to strategic planning meetings in boardrooms I'd only seen in movies. When Sacramento Business Journal named me Entrepreneur of the Year and featured my story on their cover with the headline, "From Warehouse Floor to Corporate Boardroom, the Noah Martinez Success Story," I knew I'd officially become the type of businessman Lindsay had claimed I'd never be ambitious enough to become. Harper and I had evolved into Sacramento's unofficial power couple, frequently invited to charity galas, business award ceremonies, and exclusive networking events where other entrepreneurs sought our advice on everything from scaling operations to maintaining work-life balance during rapid growth. Our weekend trips had upgraded from Napa Valley wine tastings to business conferences in Seattle, consulting opportunities in Denver, and speaking engagements throughout California where I'd present supply chain innovation for growing businesses to audiences of hundreds while Harper networked with potential design clients in luxury markets. "I'm so proud of us," Harper said as we returned from a particularly successful conference in Los Angeles where 3 companies had approached us about collaboration opportunities. 2 years ago we were strangers at a networking event, and now we're building empires together. Social media had become our unintentional highlight reel: photos from business magazine features, videos of my keynote presentations, pictures from luxury restaurants in cities where we traveled for client meetings, and candid shots of our life together that showcased the sophisticated lifestyle I'd built through actual achievement rather than pretending to afford it. Meanwhile, according to our mutual friends, Lindsay's dating life had become a series of expensive lessons about the difference between appearing successful and actually being successful. You're not going to believe what happened to that startup founder Lindsay was so excited about. Our friend Maria told me during a chance encounter at Whole Foods. Turns out Derek's revolutionary app was built entirely on investor money he'd been burning through for 2 years. His company folded, he defaulted on his Tesla lease, and she found out he was living in his parents' garage when his Uber driver dropped her off there for what she thought was his house. The tech executive she dated after Derek had turned out to be even worse, arrested for embezzling funds from his company's pension plan to maintain his expensive lifestyle, a scandal that made local business news and left Lindsay scrambling to distance herself from someone she'd been posting couple photos with just weeks earlier. And don't even get me started on the real estate mogul, Maria continued with obvious amusement. Lindsay thought she'd hit the jackpot with this guy who claimed to own multiple properties throughout Northern California. Turns out he was still legally married, living with his ex-wife, and his real estate empire was mostly rental properties he managed for other people while pretending to be the owner. Through Instagram analytics, I could see that Lindsay was one of my most frequent profile visitors, obsessively watching my transformation through carefully curated posts that documented my journey from warehouse supervisor to featured entrepreneur without ever mentioning the rejection that had motivated it all. It's actually kind of sad, Harper observed one evening as we reviewed speaking requests for upcoming conferences. She's watching you become exactly what she said she wanted, but with someone who actually appreciates what you've built. The most satisfying validation came from unexpected sources, friends who'd witnessed our entire history and now couldn't help but compare every man Lindsay dated to the one she dismissed as inadequate. I was having coffee with Lindsay last week, and she mentioned this new guy she's seeing. Our mutual friend Jessica told Harper during a girls' night that I heard about later. When she started complaining that he was vague about his finances, I couldn't help but say, Noah would never lie about money stuff, he's too straightforward for games like that. She got so quiet after that. The comparison thing is happening constantly now, Jessica continued. Every time she mentions some issue with whatever guy she's dating, someone in our friend group ends up saying something like, you had someone real and let him walk away? Or, Noah would never treat you like that. I think she's starting to realize she trained the perfect guy for someone else. As Harper and I planned our first international business trip to explore European markets for both our companies, I realized the most powerful revenge was living so well that my former rejection had become completely irrelevant to my current happiness. The California Luxury Automotive Industry Conference was supposed to be routine. I'd been invited as the keynote speaker to present supply chain innovation in high-end retail to an audience of 500 dealers, manufacturers, and industry executives who were struggling with the same inventory optimization challenges I'd been solving for years. Harper and I had arrived in style, featured in Sacramento Business Weekly the previous month as the city's dynamic duo for our collaborative approach to growing complementary businesses, and conference organizers treated us like the power couple we'd become. As I reviewed my presentation backstage, adjusting slides about micro-fulfillment strategies and just-in-time inventory management, Harper kissed my cheek and whispered, go show them why you're the expert they've been waiting for. The conference hall was packed with exactly the kind of luxury automotive professionals who represented Lindsay's world, the sophisticated, successful, entrepreneurial types she'd claimed to value, but now they were here to learn from the warehouse guy she'd rejected as insufficiently ambitious. 20 minutes into my presentation, as I was explaining how traditional dealership inventory models were bleeding money through inefficient distribution networks, I spotted a familiar figure in the third row and nearly lost my train of thought. Lindsay was sitting there in a black business suit, staring at me with an expression of complete shock, clearly having registered for this conference without bothering to check who was presenting until she saw my name on the program she was clutching in her lap. I watched her face cycle through surprise, disbelief, and what looked like growing panic as she realized she was trapped in an audience of her professional peers who were hanging on every word from the man she dismissed as beneath her standards. The key insight here, I continued, clicking to my next slide while maintaining eye contact with the executive in the front row who'd been nodding enthusiastically, is that luxury automotive retail requires the same supply chain sophistication as any high-end consumer market. You can't afford to have $80,000 vehicles sitting in the wrong location while customers wait weeks for delivery. The presentation concluded to thunderous applause and a standing ovation from an audience of industry leaders who immediately swarmed the stage like I was some kind of celebrity expert, which I suppose I had become. Noah, absolutely brilliant analysis of our distribution challenges, said the CEO of Northern California's largest luxury dealership group. My team needs to implement these strategies immediately. Can we schedule a consultation next week? As business cards and consulting requests poured in from executives who treated me like the innovative thinker Harper had always seen me as, I noticed Lindsay hovering at the edge of the crowd, clearly waiting for her chance to approach but probably uncertain how to navigate a conversation with someone who'd gone from warehouse supervisor to industry keynote speaker while she wasn't paying attention. When the crowd finally thinned, she approached with nervous energy and a smile that looked more desperate than confident. "Noah, oh my God, I had no idea you were speaking today. That presentation was incredible. I can't believe you've become such an expert on automotive supply chains," she said, talking faster than usual like she was trying to fill space before I could respond. "Hello, Lindsay," I replied with the same polite but distant tone I'd use with any conference attendee. "Thank you for coming to the presentation." Harper appeared beside me then, sliding her arm through mine with natural comfort that made Lindsay's eyes immediately dart to the engagement ring that had been featured in 3 local business magazines as part of our success story. "Lindsay, I'd like you to meet Harper Sinclair, my fiancée and business partner." "Harper, this is Lindsay Chen. She works in automotive marketing here in Sacramento." "Nice to meet you, Lindsay," Harper said warmly, completely unaware that she was shaking hands with a woman whose rejection had inadvertently launched my entire transformation. "Noah's presentation was amazing, wasn't it? I'm so proud of how he's revolutionized logistics consulting for the luxury retail market." "Yes, it was very impressive," Lindsay managed, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Congratulations on your engagement. You two make a lovely couple." "Thank you," I said simply, treating her exactly like any other industry professional who'd attended my talk. "If you'll excuse us, we have a dinner meeting with some potential clients. Enjoy the rest of the conference." As Harper and I walked away toward a group of executives who were waiting to discuss consulting contracts over dinner at Sacramento's most exclusive restaurant, I could feel Lindsay watching us leave, finally understanding that she was witnessing her former warehouse guy being celebrated by the exact professional community she'd spent years trying to impress. 6 months after that conference encounter, I proposed to Harper during a private helicopter tour over Napa Valley, presenting the ring as we hovered above the vineyard where we'd had our first business strategy discussion 2 years earlier. "Harper Sinclair, you've been my partner in everything that matters. Will you marry me and keep building this empire together?" I asked, and her tearful "yes, absolutely yes," was captured by the photographer I'd secretly hired to document the moment. The proposal video went viral on business social media within hours, shared by entrepreneurship blogs and Sacramento business accounts as Power Couple Goals, with captions celebrating our journey from conference strangers to engaged business partners. Martinez Logistics and Sinclair Design had become case studies in collaborative growth, and our engagement announcement was featured in 3 different business magazines as an example of how successful partnerships work both professionally and personally. 2 weeks later, as Harper and I toured our third $1 million property in Sacramento's exclusive Granite Bay neighborhood, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number that made us both laugh out loud. "Hey Noah, it's Lindsay. I saw your engagement announcement in Sacramento Business Journal. Miss you. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and catch up? I've been thinking about us a lot lately and wondering what might have been different if I'd been more supportive of your dreams back then." Harper read the message over my shoulder and shook her head with amused disbelief. "She's texting you about what might have been different, while we're literally house shopping for a place that costs more than she makes in 5 years? The timing is incredible." "The audacity is what gets me," I replied, blocking the number and slipping my phone back into my pocket. 4 years later, after watching my entire transformation through social media, she wants to catch up, like we're old friends instead of someone who told me I wasn't ambitious enough to date. We spent the afternoon choosing between 3 luxury properties, eventually settling on a stunning 4,500 square foot home with a view of Folsom Lake and enough office space for both our expanding businesses. Our house hunting adventures became content for our social media followers, who'd been following our success story since the early consulting days, and the real estate photos showcased the complete transformation from warehouse supervisor to millionaire entrepreneur that had taken 4 years of disciplined work to achieve. The final irony came through our friend Maria, who couldn't resist sharing what she'd overheard at Premier Luxury Motors where Lindsay still worked. One of Lindsay's coworkers was talking about this amazing logistics consultant they'd hired to optimize their inventory system, Maria told us over dinner. The woman kept going on and on about Noah Martinez from Martinez Logistics and how brilliant his strategies were, how he'd revolutionized their entire operation. Lindsay just sat there nodding and pretending to be happy about it, not mentioning that she'd known you for years. She literally has to listen to her coworkers praise the guy she rejected, Harper marveled. While sitting in the same job she had 4 years ago, watching him become exactly what she claimed to want. 3 months later, Harper and I hosted our housewarming party in our new home, inviting the network of entrepreneurs, executives, and business leaders who become our professional family over the past 4 years. As guests toured our home office, admired our view, and toasted our success with champagne that cost more than I used to make in a week, I checked Instagram one final time to see the party documentation that would inevitably make its way to Lindsay's timeline. Through mutual friends' stories and business network posts, she'd be watching our celebration from whatever modest apartment she could afford on her marketing coordinator salary, finally understanding that she'd rejected someone who would have built this exact life with her if she'd been capable of seeing his potential instead of just his current situation. Any regrets? Harper asked as we watched our guests networking in the backyard where we'd soon install the pool we'd been planning. Just one, I said, pulling her close as entrepreneurs and executives celebrated around us. I regret it took someone rejecting me to realize I was worth more than settling for someone who needed me to prove my value instead of recognizing it. As our party continued into the evening, I realized the warehouse supervisor Lindsay had dismissed as unambitious had been dead for years, replaced by someone who'd learned the most valuable lesson of all. The right person will see your worth from day one, while the wrong person will train you to find someone who actually deserves the man you become.